continuing from last week, I'll be speaking on equanimity. And today I'll be speaking on facing our fears. Well, we talked last week on equanimity. And as you all know, as I know too, we've had quite a week here in this country. We had an election this past week, and it's the outcome has had different effects on different people. And here in the Sangha, there have been a lot of fears and some anger and feelings of confusion. So I want to talk to that today. Just as a review, equanimity, the practice of balancing self and other, offers us freedom from attachment, freedom from aversion or repulsion, and freedom from indifference. They're all not helpful. Our attachment is too grabby. We grab. We want things to stay a certain way. Our aversion pushes away. And our indifference prevents us from engaging in the world around us. Equanimity is the knowledge that we're not separate. We're all in this together. And that all beings want to be happy and don't want to suffer. This basic premise can guide us in our life and give us sustenance when we really need some balance. All beings want to be happy and don't want to suffer. This is a basic truth. Yeah, we have different ideas about what that means. We come back to our roots. We can find that all beings want to be happy and don't want to suffer. Equanimity has two ways of being expressed. The first is to look over, as if you're on a high mountain looking down, or even from a plane or from space, which we can only imagine. Sometimes I like to climb the mountain behind the temple, and if you go up to the top, you can see Manhattan in the distance, New York City in the distance, and it's so tiny. It's so small. It's even hard to make out. And I like the perspective that offers. You know, when you're in the city, it feels so big and everything's so busy and the buildings are so tall and there's so much energy. And when you take a step backwards, you see this little bitty thing on the horizon. And that gives us some perspective and some space where we don't have to feel so caught up in it, but we can look over. So this is one way of expressing equanimity. The cultivation of patience. And in Zen practice, we talk about the cultivation of grandmotherly heart or grandparents' heart. This feeling that is a little different from your own children. With your own children, you're very invested in a particular outcome. But as my Dharma sister Myoy said to me once, she was trying to explain how she felt about her grandchildren. She said, you know, with my own kids, it was just, come on, come on, come on. And with my grandchildren, it's just, smile. That's what she said. Oh, that really stuck with me. A kind of acceptance that they're okay. Whatever you do, I'll love you. Yeah, you're going to mess up sometimes. Not my problem so much. My job is to love you. And it gives us certain freedom in how we interact with each other. So cultivating this grandmotherly heart is really important. This is the first aspect of equanimity, looking out over. The second is to stand in the middle. To stand in the middle. I spoke about this last week as well. Cultivating a sense of balance and inner strength, which of course comes through our practice. We strengthen our practice. We look at our own delusions, our own grabbiness, our own hindrances. We revisit our same thoughts over and over, learning to still our mind over time. And this helps us to cultivate inner stability, which in turn offers us balance. As we move through the world, the Buddhist teaching is that equanimity is walking through the 8 worldly winds, which are gain and loss, fame and disrepute, pleasure and pain, and praise and blame. We can be very invested in one side or the other. You know, when we're receiving praise, we can want it to always be that way. Oh, yeah, I am so great. Things are wonderful. Everybody loves me. And things can turn on a dime, boom. And then all of a sudden, everybody blames us for everything. And we don't like that so much. So, walking through the middle with inner stability helps us to stay stable in the middle of these worldly winds. Just keep going through. So, standing in the middle. I spoke a few weeks ago about sitting in the middle of the hurricane. This was my practice intention when I ordained. And I think originally I had an idea of sitting in peace as the winds whipped around me. But I had an idea that still contained some separateness. And over time, I really come to understand that I am also, even in the middle, in the eye of the hurricane, we are still part of the hurricane. This is a lesson that for me has come up over and over. There's always there can be this feeling of looking at or being separate. And then the world gives us reminders that we are part of. And for me, this has been a strong reminder this week. We are so surprised here in this country that people would choose someone as a leader who may be, we don't know yet, but who looks likely to be a dictator, or somebody who doesn't consider the will of the people or the goodwill for everyone. We're so surprised and shocked by that. Why? We've seen it happen all over the world, not just in the current era, but over time. If we've studied history, we've seen it happen throughout history. We've seen it happen in our workplace from time to time. You know, some of us have had bosses that had a very authoritative style. We've seen it in our families. And yet we're so shocked when it happens. There's a certain kind of an arrogance of being separated. Oh, everyone but me. We'll never go through that here. And look at us. Here we are, right in the middle. So my question for you today is, how are you going to be in this time? What are you going to do about it? How are you going to be? How are you going to show up? And the teachings on equanimity give us some clue. We must be in. We can't step out. We can't check out or dissociate or shut down completely, although sometimes that's a healthy thing to do. not really to shut down, but to take a step back, as we're doing today in the one-day sitting. When we check out or just shove things out of our minds, we can become complacent and lose sight of real danger. So, really checking out, shutting off, can turn off our sensitivity to the real danger in our life. You know, we all will experience illness, aging, and death. These are the real things to pay attention to, and we cannot escape these things. Sickness, old age, and death. These are the three signs in Buddhism. They're important things to pay attention to. Checking out isn't going to prevent them from happening. But when we check out, we become sort of turned off to the world around us. We're not really paying attention. So that when these things happen, whether danger arises, a close friend dies, we become ill, very seriously ill, then we haven't cultivated the ability to stay present to it. This is the real danger. Not the situation out there, but our practice. If we're not cultivating the ability to be present to what is, this is the real danger. Then we can't meet what comes our way. And what comes our way is completely unpredictable. We really don't know. We can imagine things, but we don't know. One thing that we do know, you know, based on the results of the election this week, is that the person who was elected is known for being unpredictable. This we know from past experience. So why then do we think we can predict? You know, there's a need to try to control the future, to find stability by predicting what might be, and then planning different contingency plans based on what we think might be. But none of this is true. It's all our imagination. This is our anxiety operating. And anxiety is the enemy of equanimity. The more we cultivate equanimity through our practice, the more we're able to be present to what is, whatever it is. Whatever it is. We never know how the day is going to go when we wake up in the morning. We never know. And we can learn to be present, not for ourselves, but for the benefit of everyone around us. And I want to encourage you strongly today to consider this seriously, because the world around us needs us. This could be, based on what we know of the past, a time of great turmoil. So for us to be part of the turmoil isn't really going to help. For us to be checked out of it isn't going to help. How are we going to show up? And if your showing up involves your superhero cape, go ahead and just fold that up right now and stick it back on your shelf. This isn't the time for that either. I had these ideas about myself. You know, I learned bystander interventions, and I was really admired those people on the subway who could stand up to a bully. And so I learned, how do they do that? And I studied it. And then my chance came, and I was on the train, and there was a train conductor, and they were really being not nice to a Black man on the train. And I was like, I am prepared. I know what to do. And then the moment happened many years ago. And I thought, okay, yeah, I'm going to say something, but the conductor's in a place of power, and I'm a white woman. I don't know if that's the right thing for me to like. And then what if he kicks me off the? And then also he's kind of scary, and I found that I did nothing, but that taught me these moments where we don't show up in the way we envision are instructive. And what I did do was take the moment when the conductor left to connect with the man who had been treated badly. And when I spoke to him and said, I saw that, that wasn't right, he softened. He knew he was seen. And then the person next to me spoke up, and the person across to me spoke up. And we all connected. So, what does your superhero look like in that type of incident? You can let it go. You're going to show up the way you're going to show up. Maybe you don't do it so-called perfect the first time or the second time or the 100th time, but just showing up is important. And this is also important. You know, in bystander intervention training, I sort of forgot all the parts about not causing a commotion, not being a hero, not like wanting things to be perfect, because those were also part of the training, because I was more invested in my superhero self. And I remembered later when I took the training again that it's also important not to speak up sometimes. Or sometimes you can create a distraction, not a direct confrontation. Or if you're not comfortable speaking up, you can connect with the person who was treated badly, or you could report it to the authorities later. Every situation is different, and not just every situation on the surface, but how we meet each situation is different for us. The important thing is to meet it. And meeting it might be, I don't know what to do in this moment, I feel afraid, and paying attention to that so that the next time it comes up, you can understand better how to act. On the other side of checking out, our delusions around equanimity can cause us to misgauge actual danger. So when our mind is just spinning and spinning and spinning in anxiety, then when actual danger arises, it's hard to recognize it and hard to know what to do. Because we created these contingency plans and thoughts and fears that are just out of control. And then we don't know what to do when something really does happen that's very serious. Recently, I had the chance to watch the movie Inside Out 2. If you haven't seen it, I recommend it. It's a girl, we met her when she was a child. It's a cartoon, you know. It's a good cartoons are good for right now. I recommend cartoons for you. So we met her when she was a child and learning how to handle her emotions. And now we meet her as puberty arises. And there's this one scene where puberty brings in some new emotions, one of which is anxiety. And there's one scene where anxiety takes over. And anxiety is this character with this strange hair. It's orange and has a really big mouth that looks like a little frightening and a little fragile at the same time. This happens to us. When anxiety just takes over, this kind of spinning starts and we feel paralyzed. We can't do anything. This prevents us from showing up. It's a construct of our minds. It's not even real. All of these scenarios that we imagine, all the plans we make, how we might deal with this, we might deal with that. Oh, and there's this. Oh, and if this happens, I might do there. None of those are real. We'll come back to the present. Come back into the actual experience that we're going through. And then we can better cultivate the ability to show up to what actually is. This week, people expressed some fears, which is natural. And look around right now. Right now, if you're able to be here for this talk, you're safe. There's nothing threatening you in this exact moment. If you're able to be here for this talk, it's very likely you're in a quiet place. It's likely that you're inside and that you have the basic necessities. If you currently, in this moment, feel unsafe, take a minute and look around. Turn your head and look over your left shoulder. Let your eyes go as far as they can reach. If you're inside, imagine the horizon, wide and spacious. And then turn your head back. Turn and look over your right shoulder. Again, imagine looking out toward the horizon as far as you can see. Turn your head back. This simple physical action can help you to come back to center. I learned it from a 5-year-old who was taught how to manage anxiety in school. If you did not learn this in elementary school, as I did not, we can continually learn. Oh, pay attention. Sometimes a 5-year-old has the best lesson for the day. Bring a sense of curiosity, no blame, no judgment. Curiosity with the intention to show up now. This curiosity can help us to shift our fears into compassion. Every morning in the temple, we chant the verse from the Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva, the Bodhisattva compassion, the verse from the Lotus Sutra for invoking compassion. In this verse, over and over and over, in each stanza, it tells us a situation that might be dangerous and how compassion helps us. For example, if surrounded with vicious bandits, each with a sword drawn to strike, by mindfully invoking Avalokiteshvara's compassion at once, by mindfully invoking Avalokiteshvara, at once our hearts will turn toward compassion. If persecuted by rulers, you face torture and execution, by mindfully invoking Avalokiteshvara's power, their weapons will thereby shatter to pieces. Over and over, there's so many stanzas. If surrounded by raging beasts with sharp fangs and dreadful claws, by mindfully invoking Avalokiteshvara's power, they will quickly scatter in all directions. Goes on and on and on. This beautiful compassion. If you look behind you, please don't touch the scroll. If you look behind you, this scroll is one of the favorite teachings of my teacher's teacher, which is a boundless ocean of compassion. The boundless ocean of compassion. What might that look like? A boundless ocean of compassion. We can't know unless we try, unless we cultivate it. Shifting our fears from how are people going to treat me to how might I minimalize the fears or the harms that I might cause someone else. Shifting from, how are they going to treat me, to how might I show up in a way that helps others to feel safe. Shifting from, does this person like me? This person like me? To, how can I be kind? How can I help them feel more at ease? Shifting from, what if this person yells at me? To, how can I offer help in a way that allows them to maintain their dignity? Nobody likes to be smothered with help. We can feel smothered if there's too much fixing and agenda. So we have to learn how to help in a way that can be received, that offers people their basic dignity. This can be stealth. You can do it in secret. You can do it very subtly. Just shifting the conversation a little bit could make someone in the room feel more safe. And doing this can change the whole energy of the room, just like on the train. Just noticing and speaking up shifted the energy. How are you going to respond to the needs of this moment? This week, I stayed away from the news largely, and then watched the news last night and saw that there was a lot of violence in Amsterdam. And there were many stories about this violence. Whose fault was it? How did it start? What happened? It's really hard to discern. There was a soccer match. When the Israeli team arrived and the fans arrived at the stadium, there were demonstrators, pro-Palestinian demonstrators at the stadium. They had been told not to gather, but then they did in different ways. Now, what was their motivation? Perhaps compassion. Just look at what's happening. Nevertheless, the fans arriving can't have felt good about that. Somebody yelling at you when you're in a foreign country. And then the next thing we know is the Israeli fans chanting terrible things. Really awful things. And then the next thing we know is apparently an organized effort to create violence against, I think, not just the Israeli fans, but to others, which seems to have been organized. So where did that come from? If you haven't heard, you might have noticed that there's a war happening. And there are terrible things happening in Gaza and in the West Bank. Where did that come from? If you've been paying attention, you noticed that there was violence on October 7th of 2023. Where did that come from? If you've been paying attention, you noticed that there was oppression before that. And going back and back and back, you can find violence on all sides of this, going back as far as your mind can possibly stretch in time. But my question to you is, how are you going to show up? Because the person I watched in this story was the man who inserted himself with a group of Jewish people who were being hunted down and started speaking Arabic loudly so that the people chasing them would go away. He can't have done that without risk to himself. But did he think about it? What do you think? Did he contemplate it for a long time? Something in him allowed him to act in the moment, regardless of what caused the situation to happen. Just to stop. I thought about this beautiful son of Vivian Silver, whose own mom was killed by violence, a lifelong peace activist who continues his mother's work. How does he find the heart to do that? This is inspiring. This is inspiring. His name is Jonathan. Young. And whatever the causes are and conditions are that have caused him suffering in his own life, he chose to continue to advocate for peace. He chose to speak up. So beautiful. Do you think one day he was angry and full of hate, and then all of a sudden he chose to speak up? No, I think he cultivated that, perhaps through his mother's teaching over time. And we can do it too. We don't need to assign blame or to hate people. It's your fault. You did this to us. You know, when things happen, oh, if only you had voted a certain way, if you had done things differently, if you had canvassed more, you person over there. No, just take what is the situation of life in this moment and ask yourself, how are you going to show up? And my hope is that all of us will show up with compassion, because compassion helps us to meet fear and transform it. And our practice teaches us how to do this. Not easy, and completely, absolutely possible for all of us. So, with tenderness and care for yourself today, be just as you are in this moment, not checked out, not anger and blame, but right in the moment. How are you feeling? Let that be your guide. Hold it gently. Bring energy to your practice. You are needed. Now. And we can do this together, supporting each other. Thank you all.